everyone, I am here at Dublin Comic Con and I am lucky enough to sit down with the absolute legend that is Scott Snyder. I mean, we've been trying to put this interview together for so long, so finally I personally flew you out to Ireland just to do this interview, not Dublin Comic Con. Scott, how have you enjoyed the convention today?
Oh, it's been amazing. And this guy, I'm so impressed with Daniel. I've been like trying to do this interview forever, and it's been my fault. Like, we've had I have 3 boys, and between like dad stuff and work, it's been so crazy that I always am like, let's sit down when we have enough time. And so we're going to do a short version of this interview now, and then you can hold me to my word. We are going to do a longer version as soon as I'm home and settled in, and we can actually like dig into lots of things.
Oh, so, I mean, amazing.
This is the preview.
His word is legal bind, so now he legally has to fulfill that, or else I'll fly out to America now. Exactly. I mean, like, literally, I don't like. You are the person who got me into comic books. I remember I sat down in the middle of an Eason's, which is a bookstore here in Ireland. I picked up Batman. Jim Gordon was Batman. I thought, what the hell? That makes no sense. I thought comics were just poor versions of cartoons. But then I was like, oh, well, no, you would never see that in a cartoon. That's something brilliant. So I can only imagine how much people have similar stories. And, like, I sent you a message, like, and I was like, he's not going to respond, because I was like I didn't expect, like, someone big would respond, because, you know, I'm not under any disillusions or, you know, but that you did respond. You were just so kind. So the fact that we finally get to chat, it truly does mean the world to me, sir. So thank you so much.
No, right back at you. Honestly, I remember when you first got in touch, and to see someone who's young and enthusiastic about comics care that much makes my day. So it's great to see.
Thank you, man. I mean, so many different things to talk about. I mean, first things first, you've been crushing it lately. I mean, I know you said on Twitter this month, August, is the month of 2s. You're getting all issue 2s, issue 12s, and so what has it been like? Because I mean, we go back obviously to Comixology deal, but we've been here all day, and so what is it like to just have all these comics coming out and they'll all be your comics?
It's a great question. I mean, I think I love being at DC, it was a pleasure.
Sure.
And I love working on these characters that I grew up idolizing.
Yeah.
But with working there comes a lot of internal math and pressure, as I'm sure Grant and Jeff can both speak to, where you get lost in it sometimes, where it's all about, how do I get this story that I want to do past these editors who might not agree? How do I make sure fans see what I'm trying to do? How do I make sure it has enough tie-ins to make the line successful for a quarter? And you wind up spending so much energy on that kind of math, which is not bad math. It's just very particular to that sort of genre of comic, that you don't realize how much battery power you lose with that. And so being out of that, and I wish them all well, and I love everybody there, but doing my own stuff now, it's almost like I have more work but way more energy to go out and sort of promote more creative energy on the book. So it's a great moment where I feel like weirdly outside of everything, and at the same time really more in touch with my own kind of creative impulses, I think, than before.
Yeah, and do you suffer from any type of creative burnout? Because when you have all these books coming out monthly, it's like, well, I mean, I have to come up with a new idea for this, or a new idea for this. Is that hard for you to manage? Because I mean, it'd be different if you did, Nocterra one year and then a different comic next year, but you're doing this all similar time. So is it hard for you to constantly come up with ideas for each book?
No, I mean, that's a great question too. I mean, it's not. I really try and isolate each week for each book. And yeah, sometimes it looks like I have more coming out than I do. So for example, on the Nocterra, we're actually writing the issues now that come out in February and March. So there's like a long time where I can take a few months off that. On the Comixology books, like for example, Canary is a 7-issue book, and I've written through issue 6.
Oh, nice.
So Dan is working on issue 4, so I don't have to go back to that book for a couple months. Same thing. So it looks like there's more coming out all at once, where I'm kind of scrambling between things, but they're a little more staggered, so I get to actually spend a week or two in the world of one story without having to, kind of blur it by going to another universe.
And is that important to you to kind of like put yourself in the world of this story? Because I mean, if you really want to dedicate yourself, I mean, like, you've probably been doing Batman for a while. Obviously, you can probably just bang out a Batman story because you've lived that character for so long, but like, these are still new worlds that are still your world. So do you kind of have to live in these worlds just to tell these stories properly?
Oh yeah. I mean, I think, again, like, the interesting thing, like, when you do Batman, everybody knows Batman, everyone knows the mythology, it predates you for decades and decades, and you're trying to convince people that you have something to say. You're trying to come in there to this whole world they know and say, this is why I deserve a shot on this.
Yeah.
When you're doing creator-owned, usually they're coming over because they've liked something else you've done and they're willing to give you a shot.
Yeah.
But you're building everything from the ground up with them. And there's a kind of organic, exciting, do-it-yourself quality to that. So, yeah, it's like building a whole planet together where you're saying some of them require a lot of that, too. Like, We Have Demons has, like, a lot of mythology and a lot of... Whereas, like, Wildfire is much more like, you got to get them to love these characters in this scenario. So each one is such a different writing experience. I mean, the goal to me was, I do this class through Substack, which I love doing. And the golden rules of the class, there are 2 rules to it, and they're the same rules that I've always tried to follow since I was in grad school and college, really, and someone taught me this. But one is, you've got to write the story that you want to pick up and read more than any other that day, no matter whatever it is. It can be politics, it could be political, it can be a memoir, it could be fantasy. The second is, you've got to stay the most exciting writer to yourself at all times, no matter what. And it's not easy to do, you don't always succeed at it. Yeah. But following those things is really where I'm at this year, like trying very, very hard to make stories that make me excited about myself as a collaborator with these incredible partners, letting them shine and trying to follow and adapt to the stories they want to tell, as opposed to always being like metal, this, that. Yeah. And secondarily, just trying to make sure that each story is something that I can stand behind and say, I love this as much as anything I've done. Yeah. So they're really fun priorities to have after, maybe being kind of a little bit insulated in the DC world for so long.
Yeah, and so what's it like crafting these like long-lasting characters? Like, if you said to me, if you said to me, like, can you think of another Batman villain? I'd say, no, I think they've all been done. But then you come up Court of Owls, Batman Who Laughs, and then even Blacktop Bill, who's the worst villain ever. I mean that in the way that he's just a horrible person and character. Horrible. And so, getting to create these new villains, these new aspects of the world, is that something that appeals to you as a writer, or is it more the character-driven and the other elements of a story that appeals to you?
The villain is always, like, super key to me. I mean, I think part of it is that I really, like, the villain is, I love horror, right? Yeah. I'm, like, a big horror writer, horror fan. And I think when horror is done right, what you realize is that the villain or the monster is an extension of your worst fears, for that thing. So whether they're fears about yourself, about the world, about human nature, in good horror like Night of the Living Dead or, Psycho,
the George
or
A. Romero stuff.
The monster is a reflection of our own ugliness.
And I think that's the best thing about Batman. All of his films represent an aspect of him. I mean, exactly. I'm preaching to the choir here by telling you about this, but I think, that's a really fundamental aspect, I feel, to a character. And I think that's what makes a good villain, when it's either, the inverse, the reverse, or you can just see yourselves, or you can even empathize with stuff like that. So, let me ask you this. Would you like to see the Court of Owls and Matt Reeves, the Batman? Because I have to get my Bleeding Cool article.
Sure. I and they've been so kind about saying nice things about it. And Greg actually bumped into Paul Dano at San Diego, and he said those things to Greg about wanting to have the Court of Owls be in stuff soon. And, they've been super sweet. And, like, I would love it. I mean, I think the thing that I would say to them, that I said to the game makers at Warner Brothers for Gotham Knights, and that I also, I've said to anybody that's taken any of our properties, with Fortnite as well, with the Batman Who Laughs, is that I don't need you to be religiously, like,
slave to the
exactly
idea.
What I want is for you to take the core and then make it something you love that fits your story. So I'd love to see. I love their vision. So, and I'm a sucker. Once I saw the contact lens go in the beginning, I was like, this is my favorite Batman movie. So if they use the Court of Owls, I'd be over.
I was in the cinema with my friends, and I don't want to spoil it, but some Year Zero stuff is in it, and I was knocked him. I was like, that's Scott Snyder stuff. He's a great friend of mine. Like,
I was sitting there like, I was very, very happy. Yeah, I mean, like, to see that anything you've done has had an impact or sticks means the world. So,
and so, of all the comics, or your newer comics, is there any you'd like to see adapted to film or TV? I think you could do Night at the Ghoul. I mean, imagine that, or like literally any of them you could pick out.
That's the first one we're going out with, actually, is Night of the Ghoul. We're going to go out to see if anyone wants to kind of take it on for TV film. Sometime in the next few weeks. So I'm really, really excited about it. It's the first out of the gate, just because of timing and all this. The stuff that it's coming out in print soon, and from Dark Horse, and so I'd like to see them all, in different ways. I think the beauty of being able to create these things, to go back to your other question, is that, like, I'll come up with a seed of an idea, right? So let's say, like, Francis Manipal and I with Clear, you know? So Francis was staying at my house with his daughter and his wife, and our families are friends.
Awesome.
So we were hanging out, and they stayed with us for a few days, and I remember talking to him about, you know, what are you most afraid of for your kid? Like, because right now, what I'm scared of is the fact that in America in particular, you can be so insulated from other points of view.
Yeah.
It's so easy to choose sort of viewpoints and information that just reinforces the stuff you already believe or already like, that they're growing up in a world where, whether it's music or TV, every algorithm says, you like that? Why don't you have more of that?
Yeah.
As opposed to, you like that? Try something different. And Francis was saying the same thing. And so we were like, look, why don't we build a sci-fi thing? What genre do you want to work in? He was like, I want to do sci-fi. I was like, let's build a scary sci-fi future where that's the end-all be-all of the way people experience things.
Yeah.
And so that's how Clear came about. And every single one of the books, like, you know, We Have Demons was this, Night of the Ghoul came about because Francesco and I were saying in 2016, when things were really going nuts in the States, isn't it a great time, like, to make... We both started watching old horror movies again just to escape. And he was like, what if we think about making a classic monster, but one that's scary in this day and age? And I was like, that's a good challenge. Why don't we make a scary, like a classic looking Universal type monster, but one that's about the fears we're all experiencing now, pandemics and civilization ending issues. And
I think that's what makes good art, when you can inject that reality in it. And I think, like, sci-fi, someone watching Neil Blomkamp's District 9 is,
I love it.
like, that deals with segregation, but under that alien format. I think maybe that makes it easier to digest for some people.
Totally.
Because if you're watching, it's like, well, that's not, I'm not an alien, so why would I care? You know?
But it gets the message across emotionally. And I think that's the fun of these books that we're doing now, both with Comixology and IDW, and that is that each one is very homegrown with the creator. So they weren't ideas that I, like, pitched to somebody and they didn't want it, well, I took it to another creator. They were all, like, conversations between me and the co-creator about ideas that were very nascent, very early. About, do you respond to this? Is this something you're afraid of? Is this something you hope for? And so I feel so good about the books. Like, I don't even worry about how they're going to do, or because I'm so proud of them as individuated singular things and visions that I'm really, really happy with them. But, like, what you just said too is interesting. Like, sometimes with Batman in particular, every story we did was pretty personal, right? And some of them are more obvious than others, but, like, when you work on a character like that, sometimes, like the arc that you began with, the Gordon one, you can be more obvious about it, where like that one is we wrote that at a time when we felt that there was sort of tremendous strife between trust in the police, trust in government, trust in, as there is, again lately. But could Batman be a figure that had sort of a real world sort of job for trying to bridge these chasms, And instead, so that's one thing where it's very obvious. And the issue I did with Brian Azzarello, the 44 with Jock, that one is very much like kind of taken from things in the news. Whereas Zero Year, on the other hand, is like Riddler bots and
you can have those two elements and you can just
but that story, as personal and as important to me as the Super Heavy was, Zero Year was about my kids realizing my son, who's over there, is 15. Like, when he was 5, he went to school and they had a shooter drill, and he got locked in the hallway because they didn't know he was out there, and he would never go to school after that without a water bottle. And all I remember thinking is, they've been pressuring me to do a new Batman origin, but I was like, I'll do a Batman origin, but I want to put all this stuff in it, shooters. And
when you can turn something like that into art, like I've heard Matt Fraction lost his dog, he put that into Hawkeye. It's these real life things that when you inject them in story, I think, and like James O'Barr's The Crow, when it's almost therapeutic in a way.
It's therapeutic.
Yeah?
It is. And the other thing is, you can do something like that where in Zero Year, it might not be obvious to people how personal it is, because, like I was saying, in Wytches or in Batman 44 Super Heavy, it's clear what it's about. But in Zero Year, I translated into, the Red Hood Gang but the Red Hood Gang is random gun violence, and the Riddler is sort of terrorism, and all this stuff is there. It's just hidden in the kind of crazy comic book language.
That's interesting. We talk about Batman villains representing an element of Batman, but What if Batman villains represent an element of the real world?
Oh, yeah.
That's a different ballpark. Before we finish up, are you on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter?
I am.
Just at Scott Snyder, is it?
Yeah, I'm SSnyder1835 at Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. But this is my promise to Daniel and to you. Like, when I am back home, we're going to get on and do a Zoom thing, and we're going to talk for a good hour about everything you want.
Oh, man, it's a true honor. Thank you so
it's a
much,
pleasure.
sir. It's an honor.